Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Girdhari Radha Girdhari Radhe Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Vishpad Paramhamsa Pravijikacharya Suttara Sata Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Vishpad Paramhamsa Pravijikacharya Suttara Sata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Vishpad Paramhamsa Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Vishpad Paramahamsa Srila Satchit Ananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai. Jai Vishpad Paramahamsa Srila Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhugan ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhana ki Jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Balaye Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Stay Saraswati Devi Gaurani Vicharne. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Prabhus, my Prabhus, for the warmth and the kindness in which you greeted me. It's been just a week, but according to Ramananda Roy, back pain is nothing compared to the separation of the devotees. So you've certainly melted my heart with your kindness and your friendship. So please accept my gratitude. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're getting to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, Text number 17. Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. Vayam Pramatasya Vaneshu Api Shad. Vayam Pramatasya Vaneshu Api Shad. Yata Sa Aste Saha Shat Satpatna. Yata Sa Aste Saha Sat Sapatna. Chitindriya Shyatma Rater Buddhasya. Chitindriya Shyatma Rater Buddhasya. Vihashrama Kim Nu Karoti Avadyam. Vihashrama Kim Nu Karoti Avadyam. Vayam Pramatasya Vaneshu Api Syad. Yata Sa Aste Sahashat Sapatna. Chitindriya Shatma Ratir Buddhasya. Kahashrama Kim Nu Karotya Vadyam. Vayam Pramatasya Vaneshu Api Shad. Yata Sa Aste Sahashat Sapatna. Chitindriya Shatma Ratir Buddhasya. Kahashrama Kim Nu Karotya Vadyam. One more. You want to hear something funny? I heard Vijay Prabhu's very wonderful class yesterday, read it from the Bhagavatam, etc. And I somehow or other thought that was the verse I was going to give today. So I've got a pleasant surprise. Hopefully won't be unpleasant for you, catching me off guard. Text number 17. Krishna certainly has a sense of humor. So, word for words. Bhayam, fear. Pramatasya, of one who is bewildered. Vaneshu, in forest. Api, even. Shat, there must be. Yataha, because. Saha, he, one who is not self-controlled. Aste is existing. Saha, with. Shatsapatnaha, 6 co-wives. Chitta indriyasya, for one who has already conquered the senses. Atmarate, self-satisfied. Buddhasya, for such a learned man. Griha ashramaha, household life. Kim, what? Nu, indeed. Karoti, can do. Avadyam, harm. Translation. This is Lord Brahma speaking, continuing to preach or instruct Maharaj Priyavrata. So he says, even if he goes from forest to forest, one who is not self-controlled must always fear material bondage, because he's living with 6 co-wives, the mind and knowledge-acquiring senses. Every householder, even householder life, however, cannot harm a self-satisfied, learned man who has conquered his senses. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Narottam Das Thakur sung, Grihe Vanite Take, Agoranga Bale Dake, whether one is situated in the forest or at home. If he's engaged in devotional service of Lord Chaitanya, he's a liberated person. Here this is also repeated. For one who has not controlled his senses, going to the forest to become a so-called yogi is meaningless. Because his uncontrolled mind and senses are going with him, he cannot achieve anything, even by giving up household life and staying in the forest. Formerly, many mercantile men from the upcountry of India used to go to Bengal. Thus, there's a familiar saying, if you go to Bengal, your fortune will go with you. Our first concern, therefore, should be to control the senses. And since the senses cannot be controlled unless engaged in devotional service to the Lord, our most important duty is to engage the senses in devotional service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. Bhakti means engagement of the purified senses in the service of the Lord. Herein Lord Brahma indicates that instead of going to the forest with uncontrolled senses, it's better and more secure to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. Even household life can do no harm to a self-controlled person acting in this way. It cannot force him into material bondage. Srila Rupa Goswami has further enunciated this position. Iha yasya haredashe kamana manasagira nikalasvapi avastasu jiva mukta suuchite. Regardless of one's circumstances, if one fully engages his activities, mind, and words in the devotional service of the Lord, he should be understood to be a liberated person. End quote. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur was a responsible officer and householder, yet his service to the cause of expanding the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is unique. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur says, Dadantindriya kala sarpa patali pratokatadam shrayate. The sense organs are certainly our greatest enemies, and they are therefore compared to venomous serpents. However, if a venomous serpent is bereft of its poison fangs, it's no longer fearful. Similarly, if the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, there's no need to fear their activities. The devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement move within this material world, but because their senses are fully engaged in the service of the Lord, they're always aloof from the material world. They're always living in a transcendental position. We could please pray together. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shilta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karana Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakopatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vivacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Boy, Lord Brahma is really driving his point home. Just do the service. Surrender. Do the service. And it's interesting. You could almost say he's implying, well, if your senses aren't controlled, what's the use of staying on Gunda mud in a mountain and carrying on? Well, his senses are anything but uncontrolled. I mean, he's fixed in Krishna consciousness. He's fixed in his meditation on the Lord, his determination to please the Lord. So Lord Brahma, you could say, is speaking philosophy, or you could say he's taking a little license, the authority, the superior can do that. Hey, you could advance some more. Your senses aren't that controlled, are they? I remember one time I had a Sankirtan leader, party leader, and he was really trying to grind me down. My false ego, not me. He might have thought me, but anyway, he goes, something along the lines, asked me a question, don't you ever have any thoughts of criticism of the devotees or what have you. So in my honesty, I said, well, yeah, sometimes just see. What an offender, what a rascal. So the nature of the soul and the unlimited variegatedness of emotional reciprocation with Krishna in service, in love. The devotee always thinks that I can improve in my service. They want to improve in their service. That's the constant driving force. Let me please Krishna better and better and better. These other Prabhus are pleasing him so nicely. I got to up my game here. There is a caveat to that. The cowherd boys and Sakya Ras, they may have a little peculiarity where they think, nah, Krishna's my buddy, and they're perfectly situated. They consider him their equal. Some of the elders even, he's dependent upon me. But be that as it may, the devotee's always trying. Certainly that should be our mentality. So he's talking about 6 co-wives. It's kind of hard to, Hare Krishna. It's kind of hard to imagine in this day and age. I mean, the playboys, the players, they like to exploit as many women as they can and put the notches on their belt or what have you. But it's nothing like having the responsibility of a wife, 2 wives, 3 wives, 5 wives, 6 wives. Heck, Krishna had 16,108 wives and completely satisfied them all. If he didn't, that verse comes to mind in a different light than what I had thought of yesterday. But Krishna says, if I did not perform my duty, then the whole world would be put to ruination. 16,108 dissatisfied wives could create some havoc. But what are these 6 co-wives? It's an analogy, and as it's stated in the verse, it's the mind and the knowledge-acquiring senses. The ones that are grabbing. As Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, the ones that are measuring. That looks pretty good. I think I like that. Ooh, no, I don't like that. And the epitome of it is, and forgive me because I was with non-devotees in my work for so long and could really see the pages of the Bhagavatam in front of me, but the lusty man, all he thinks about is exploiting women. I mean, the scientists have studied this, where how often, I mean, even in a minute, they're thinking about lust and exploitation. How often throughout the day. I mean, it's incredible. Boom, 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 boom. Their thoughts are constantly bound. So every time they see a woman, she's a little fat. She's old. She's ugly. Or they, every once in a while, that one meets my standard. Of course, he's as plain and as unqualified and as ugly or what have you as the rest of them. But still he's thinking, I like this, I don't like that. So that's the nature of the mind through the instrumentality of the senses. And we've bought into this. We think this is the paradigm that the conditioned soul has, that this will make me happy. It never makes us happy. Never. And let me see. Was it there? Looking at yesterday's purport because I thought I was going to. A liberated person, therefore, does not think about whatever he's ignorantly done in the past. Instead, he acts in such a way that he will not produce another body by fruitive activities. So that's, of course, the devotee doesn't, you quoted, forget the past that sleeps by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And remembering the past really is lamentation for the most part because the good old days are gone. And that's all you're left with ultimately when you're just on the treadmill of sense gratification. But in Krishna consciousness, there are so many nuances, or you could say, in one sense, there's always an exception, even an exception to everything. So I don't know if that's an absolute, but often you can say that. Because in the waves of devotion and your reciprocation with the Lord, certainly sometimes you think about your past. I mean, for heaven's sakes, in this Sharanagati by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he's written many songs dwelling upon his past. And he's not very happy because he considers that he completely wasted his life. I'm just going to read one song, and it's one of the more upbeat ones where he's kind of gotten past that my life is wasted, it was ruined, it has no value. So this is song 6 of Dainya, the section's Dainya from Sharanagati. He says, "O Lord, I offer this humble prayer at your feet. I give up the shelter of your feet." Past tense. "I gave up the shelter of your feet, which are soft as newly grown leaves. And now my mind has become dried up like a desert, being scorched by the fire of absorption in horrible worldliness. I find no strength to rise again, and thus I spend my days bitterly lamenting. O Lord, who's called the Master of the meek and humble, your lotus feet are my only hope. There's never been a soul as forlorn as me. Please be merciful and award me the association of your devotees. For by tasting the pleasure of hearing the discussions of your pastimes, I shall give up all evils. One hope animates my soul, to spend day and night singing your holy name while living in your divine abode. Your servant Bhakti Vinod begs a place in the supremely cooling shade of your lotus feet." So that's one of the upbeat ones. He's kind of rounded the corner that, hey, I have no hope, but still I hope against hope. It's the only thing that gives me life, that keeps me going, is that somehow or other the Lord will unconditionally be kind to me, offer me His shelter and His unconditional mercy. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, like any sincere devotee, prays and wants that more than anything. The shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, the service of the Lord's lotus feet. So Srila Prabhupada, I believe it's in the first canto, he talks in some of the purports that when the thoughts of the past come up, then one should feel repentant. Because many of us do have a past. Like it said, every saint has a past? And every sinner has a future. So when the mind does go there, because it goes so many places, so when it does, we should be aware, oh my God, but by the grace of the Vaishnavas and the spiritual master, who knows what dark place that path would lead to. The suffering. There's such untold suffering in this life. But for one who is addicted to sense gratification and thus becomes degraded in his activities, his consciousness, and the modes of material nature, then basically the envious goes down, 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 down. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, attaining repeated births among demoniac species, it can get very dark and very, very miserable. So you think it's rough now. Sometimes we've been delivered from that which would be so much worse. And that went along with yesterday's verse about the sleep. The sleep and the dreams at night. You wake up and you go about your business. Some people, they record their dreams. They really put a lot of stock into the dreams. For the most part, devotees, aspiring Vaidika bhaktas like us, no, not so much. We get up, try to get out of the mode of ignorance, and immediately, enthusiastically run for service. Run to remember Krishna and respects and service to Guru. So, Srila Prabhupada says that the thoughts at night are considered the dream because we spend less time at night in sleep than we do waking. But he says the day is just another dream. It's the daydream. They're just as unsubstantial as the night dream. But because of the identification with the dream, the illusion that I'm controlling, I'm enjoying, then we think it's real. We think we are that person in this drama that by our desire and the reciprocation of the laws of material nature is set up for us. We think this is life. It's not life. It's ignorance. Ignorance is the source of all pain. But pain, like pleasure, it's just one of the dualities that are part and parcel of this world that a devotee rises beyond because they're absorbed in their thoughts of service to Krishna. They're absorbed in their thoughts of Krishna and his devotees. As the verse Ihayasya Dashe Karmanamanasagira was quoted by Rupa Goswami, that one who engages his mind, his words, his activities in the Lord without cessation. It's a high bar for us aspiring devotees, practicing devotees, but without cessation. There's no stock put into the pain or pleasure of the body. It is what it is. It's like a dream. It's like my car. Not the prettiest car on the block, certainly not. This might be the oldest on the block. But, hey, the scratches and bumps come along as long as it's still functioning. It's like, oh, that was a bummer. Another scratch on the car or what have you. But the identification with it is minimal. And that's the paradox for the non-devotee. We say we're not our bodies, and we're not. We keep hearing it, and at some point it will become realized. It'll become realized when we have practiced controlling the mind and senses to the point where we simply engage in Krishna's service under the direction of Guru and Vaishnavas. That's the realization. The verse was in the purport yesterday. Mamcha yogya vicharina bhakti yogena sevate saganan samatitaitan brahma bhuyaya kapate. Immediately, free, liberated, beyond the modes of material nature. Because of the full engagement in devotional service. But the interesting thing, Krishna consciousness is, it's so difficult for one who isn't getting the mercy and guidance of Guru and Vaishnavas. It's like we say we're not our bodies. We say the activities the body engages in are not that important. They're temporary. And they're certainly not meant to be endeavors to squeeze some pleasure out for us. All activities are meant for the pleasure of Krishna. But even though we say we're not the body and we're not the activities, the devotees are more attentive to their activities and their engagements than anybody else. Now you do have the expert Vaishyas or people who take seriously their responsibilities in life in the material world. And in that sense we can learn from them. Some people, that saying, it's not the right way, there's another way of saying it, but the devil's in the details. The positive way of saying it is, I guess, the Lord is in the details. Because it's an offering to the Lord, whatever you may be doing. Just like when one is Krishna conscious and is dressing the deities, or preparing an offering, or putting the offering on the plates or whatever. They do so to the best of their ability, to the best, in as expert a way as their intelligence can facilitate. They want everything to be perfect. Raghava Pandit, whenever he would cook, Srimati Radharani personally would come to his kitchen. Lord Chaitanya would often come to his offerings. Hear that bell ringing, mantras and meditation of the Lord. The Lord heard. Dinner time, run to accept the offering. There's the pastime, and he was well-to-do, and he had really nice orchards, fruit orchards, mango orchards like that. And yet, if he knew that there was a better crop somewhere else, then he would send his servant, go and get some of those mangoes. Let's offer these to the Lord. And showing that he wanted only the very best to be offered to the Lord. And then as the pastime goes, as related in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the servant is coming into his house, and somehow or other some dust from above the door, he touched it. It's like, I don't know what he's doing reaching up to touch it, but somehow or other it becomes impure. What are you doing touching something dirty? You're carrying that which is to be offered. Useless. I can't offer these to the Lord. Highest standard. And such devotees with that kind of desire, attentiveness to details in their services, their duties, those are the devotees that the Lord reciprocates with and accepts their offerings. Because only by love can you come to that point. Only by a growing desire to reawaken our love, what to speak of when it is there, fully realized. Only in that mood do you become attentive. Otherwise, the modes are just pushing us. In the mode of passion, you just slap on the food on the plate, or, we could make so many examples. I certainly could in my life. The modes. Just acting like a dumb machine. Like you're doing it automatically. So anyway, it's a quandary. Because we're not the body, but we try our best to take care of the body as best we can. The activities of Varna and Ashram, we're not a Brahmin, we're not a Kshatriya, we're not a Brahmachari, I'm not a Vanaprastha. It's like we're none of these things, but yet we do them fully embracing them. And this is the mood, the essence of what Lord Brahma is teaching or instructing Priyavrata Maharaj about. Doesn't matter if you sit on this mountain following Narada Muni's instructions, or you come and take up the kingdom's responsibilities as desired by your father, by me, and ultimately by Krishna. For you, there won't be any difference. You'll be engaged in activities within which you can please Krishna. You will advance in Krishna consciousness. The other way of saying it, the negative way, is you don't have to worry. You're not going to fall down. You're not going to become contaminated. Now, as we advance in Krishna consciousness, and as I quoted from Bhakti Vinod's songs, the more you advance, the more contaminated you think you are. It's incredible. Nature of the soul, humility, dainya. The nature is that you see the shortcomings. And that drives one to improve. Always try and improve in service to the Lord. But in reality, as we advance, these shortcomings are becoming overcome. I found it very interesting, the concept, the pure devotee and the past karma that will manifest as his body suffering or going through something in life, the experiences that he has. I found it interesting because, generally speaking, when we think of pure devotees, liberated pure devotees, we don't think they have karma. But in the purport, it was talking about the karma that has brought about the body, that they're not creating karma now. Their activities in service to Krishna create no material reactions. They simply result in the pleasure of Krishna, which is our fulfillment of purpose and identity. But we see the Lord, whether He is, I suppose you could make a case, once again, an exception to that if one descended from the spiritual world, like we say Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, then if they didn't have a previous life in the material world, you can't say, well, the karma was that which set up the body, and being gored by a bull, or having a wife that would rather go upstairs and drink tea and eat biscuits rather than hear the Katha, Krishna Katha, and the Satsanga, etc. These things, they were arranged by the Lord. But interestingly enough, the body, and it took me some time to embrace this, but the body is made of matter. And matter is influenced by the modes of material nature and the laws of nature. So for the pure devotees, heck, even for the aspiring servants of the pure devotees, the Lord is personally involved, overseeing, seeing how those laws are enacted upon, seeing what effect there is in the life of the devotee. It's not like, it's something beyond the realm of this creation. He works through the laws that it functions on. But he's in control of everything. But for his, through delegation and by his desire, what have you. But for the devotee, he personally becomes involved, personally oversees. He's in our heart, and he's arranging it all. And the devotees take great solace in this. Because come what may in life, and we do and will suffer because of possessing a body, come what may, we know it's arranged by Krishna. And Krishna is only motivated by love for us. Only trying to get us to come back to the platform of eternality and service to Him. Coupled with the understanding that, man, I deserve so much more suffering. See, the laws are just. If you're under the laws of karma, you get what you deserve. Full brunt. Grinds everybody to dust. But for the devotees, the Lord, He holds back. It's like Arjuna when he was fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. When the battle was over and won, then Krishna told him, get off the chariot. Right now. He got off, and immediately his chariot just exploded and disintegrated, practically speaking. In so many pieces. And what had happened was that the chariot had been hit and it absorbed so much destructive energy from the weapons of the enemy. But Krishna had protected. Krishna had held it at bay. And he didn't let Arjuna suffer because of any of that. And that's the way it is for the devotee. Whatever we go through, Krishna is minimizing. I mean, oh my God, I can't even imagine what I deserve. Being a paraplegic or something. It's amazing how much suffering the material body can facilitate. But whatever it may be, to whatever extent it is, I always like to, it inspires me to remember Vishnumurti Devi Dasi. Vaikunthamurti, forgive me, Vaikunthamurti. At the very end, all she could do was move her right hand. It was a gradual process of taking everything away. Bedridden. I won't go into the list. It's a little gruesome, the body. But still accepting it gracefully as Krishna's arrangement. Only a devotee can do that. What does the non-devotee do? They take shelter in trying to hide from it, in intoxication, morphine, etc. It's just too much. But for the devotee, it's never too much. Because, mame viye prapadyante, mayamitam tarantite. If we take shelter of this process, then Krishna helps. And He helps us rise above it, increasingly so. And the future is bright. Just like Priyavrata's future is bright, he's going to take on a headache and a half managing the universe. I think Dravida Prabhu drove that point home a couple of times. What responsibility? For Krishna, no problem. Whatever inconvenience or distress I have to undergo, if it will result in the pleasure of Krishna, no problem. Krishna has a headache. He needs the dust from your feet. Here, take, the gopis say. Take it. Give to him immediately. Don't you know you'll go to hell? No problem. Who cares? Let Krishna be free of his headache. This is the mood of the devotees in our disciplic succession. This is the mood of Krishna and his family and friends and servants. And this is what we're being invited to enter into. And thus we hear and practice to the best of our ability in the association of others who are doing the same. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, if there are no burning questions yet, I just wanted to comment on what you mentioned about Bhakti Vinod Thakur's song, you know, of giving a category or
Dainya.
List. Dainya.
Utter humility.
There's the, as you undoubtedly know, there's a section in the Nectar Devotion that's now entitled Submission. It's one of the 64 processes, I think. And really what that is a vigyapti, which means submitting an appeal. This is what that section would be called now. And I just wanted to refer, because what you described there, and it's a common form of a song, Narottam Das Thakur has it, it's a Dainya Bodhika, or Dainya Vodhika. Prabhupada has it humbly submitting oneself. But it's when he gives the examples, it's exactly that. You know, I spent my whole life acquiring this material knowledge, and it makes me stupider, and and you kind of give a whole list there, and sometimes that's it. It's a list, but often, as you mentioned now, you say it comes to the point of, therefore you'll find no one who's better deserving of your mercy. If you look, you're the most merciful, but I'm the most fallen, so therefore I have. So at some time, there's three of them here. One is some pratnanatmika, very feelingly offering prayers. And the example that he gives is, I always forget the Sanskrit, but just as a boy is attracted to girls and girls attracted to a boy, let me be attracted to you, Krishna, you know. And then oftentimes this Dainya Bodhika is combined with Lalashamayi, where you're also very feelingly asking for some perfectional stage. You know, there's a prayer involved in it. So I just wanted to call attention to the devotees to that, because that is really meant, like the substance of our inner emotions we're supposed to have as we chant and as we perform a devotional service, feeling oneself unqualified, fallen, appealing to the Lord to please lift me up. What does it mean? Trinadapi Sunichena. You're really supposed to feel most neglected and unqualified, and therefore you have to chant with more feeling. That's the whole idea, is that there's no hope for me but if Krishna just gives me. So this section is very meaningful. It's submission.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
I was you touched on this at the beginning. I was thinking it's kind of I don't know if I want to say funny, but it's the way that Brahma's going about the argument seems a little clever. Of course, different points are coming out of it, but he's saying that, better to, at least in this verse in Prabhupada, he's saying better to, enter married life, and control your senses, than to not enter married life with uncontrolled senses. But it seems that that's not really comparing apples to apples, because he's not saying, if you're, are Priyavrata senses controlled, and if so, is it better to, he's not saying better to get married with controlled senses than not married with controlled senses. And but what I'm also was thinking of is that I've heard someone argue, or at least mention that, well, if my senses are uncontrolled, if they're going to be uncontrolled anyway, if right now I don't have like immediate hope of having my senses controlled, Is it really better for me to be in married life with uncontrolled senses as opposed to not with uncontrolled senses? Of course, there's a whole process for dealing with uncontrolled senses involving married life. But someone may say that, well, if I get married, it's not, assuring me that then my senses will be controlled anyway. And so if my senses are uncontrolled, either my senses are controlled now or they're uncontrolled now, and it seems that, weighing the two, someone may argue that I should just not get married, it's not going to help the situation. As someone as it said that, I'm already dealing with my mind, why add a second mind to the mix? So could you touch on those points? Thank you.
Thank you for drawing attention to that particular point. I'm not going to offer any personal marital advice to you. Forgive my frivolity. But Priyavrata Maharaj, it's not that he needed to enter into household life. That wasn't the need. The need was the universe needed a ruler. And if you're going to take on that responsibility, then it is highly advisable you do so with the help of a wife. Behind every great man is a woman. Behind, what was the guy's name? Julius Caesar was Cleopatra. I mean, that's just the way it works. The man goes out there, he conquers the kingdom, he comes back, and his wife flatters him like, you are the conqueror of the world. It's just the way the laws of nature work. So he took on that, and, and all that, I think it was Vijay Prabhu quoting, you begin with your wife, and then it goes to the children, and you have to have land, and sutapta. So it just accumulates. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, my gosh, what responsibility. And Prabhupada said his contribution was unique in this purport. I mean, unique, it's almost an understatement. It's like, uniquely magnificent. Without his contribution, there is no ISKCON, there is no our practicing of Krishna consciousness. But, so, it is a great art understanding how to perform one's duties in life. And the duties are offered by the Scripture, which is given by the Lord. Thus, transcendence is situated in these acts of service or sacrifice. And it requires the expert guidance of the spiritual master to perform them perfectly. So that's very applicable for you and me. For a soul like Priyavrata, it's like the Bhagavad Gita 3:17. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, who is satisfied in the self only, fully satisfied, for him there is no duty. Doesn't matter if he takes on the service or not. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any living being. So, what he gets out of it is the pleasure of the Lord. Whatever Guru, Vaishnavas instruct, this is what will please the Lord, then I'll do that. Because even though I'm perfectly situated, my senses are controlled, my mind is controlled, this is Maharaj Priyavrata, this is what will please the Lord. Okay. So do it or don't do it. It's like the blessing that was given. You live or die, it doesn't matter. You're going to engage in service here or there. So another aspect that I had a thought of, Lord Brahma is our founder acharya of our sampradaya, just like Srila Prabhupada is the founder acharya of ISKCON. And Narada Muni is his direct disciple. So it's like the direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada who've taken up service as Diksha Gurus, as Siksha Gurus, etc. Well, if not only is he superior, so okay, like I think that was said yesterday, the day before, okay, we'll go with him because he is the senior most authority. And you can also put it in the light, he's also the founder of Acharya. I mean, Srila Prabhupada always trumped whatever his disciples, if it need be, came up with. If need be, he would always trump what disciples would come up with. And this platform, the liberated stage of Krishna consciousness, do we have something to look forward to? Because it's a whole nother paradigm. The things Srila Prabhupada would say sometimes, they would just blow our minds because they were beyond the limitation of our realizations. One of my favorites that I always quote is when leaders of our movement were so upset that somebody had broken away and taken disciples with them and seemed to be minimizing the fullness of the program of Srila Prabhupada. That seemed like they were curtailing, etc. And, they were so worked up. I mean, they actually considered, maybe we should kill him. That'll solve the problem. And Prabhupada, when they were talking, presenting these things, and he said, well, maybe you could forgive him. And I hear statements like that out of Janani Vasprabhu all the time. Things that just like, God, I didn't think of that. And that's the liberated platform of, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. It's really glorious. So that last point of founder Acharya and, blowing our minds because it's so far beyond what we're aware of is not specifically to the point, but did I sufficiently touch on uncontrolled senses for Maharaj Priyavrata? They were controlled, and he could have not taken up the service, and if there weren't Guru Aparad involved in that, theoretically on its own, he would have been fine.
I guess my question is still, what's the place for someone who with uncontrolled senses, it seems? Because it seems that the brahmacharya ashram is meant to, for a person to control one's senses. And it's not that brahmacharya ashram means train all the kids to control their senses, but then those who fail to control their senses get married. But it was that control your senses, and then that's standard. But then if you're not satisfied, even with controlled senses, then get married if you're not satisfied. But it's not like that brahmacharya ashram means you train the kids in celibacy and controlling their eating, controlling everything. And then those who just can't do it, get married. But they expect that everybody does it. And then with controlled senses, then they can properly enter into married life. But then if you have people who don't have those controlled senses, it seems that they aren't really fit for the brahmacharya ashram, but they also aren't fit for the married ashram. So then what do those people do? I've heard people argue that, well, I guess better for me to stick it out, in the brahmacharya ashram, or sometimes, or the argument is that, well, I can't control my senses, so I'll just get married. But it's not that necessarily solves the problem. If you didn't control your senses, then you get married, you're going to cause more problems, you could say. So.
Yeah, I think, if you might, you're presenting a full package, but there was one point where I could have interrupted and said, that's a misconception. And that is, you're not supposed to have uncontrolled senses in the brahmacharya ashram. Now, you may have lust. Lust is in the mind, the intelligence, the false ego. How burning, how pushing is that lust? To what degree are you taking shelter of the names and the philosophy and the Krishna Katha and the services? Your desire to be reunited in service to Krishna. How much are you taking shelter of that and starving the lust, the desires that come up, throw it away, reject, delete. To what degree does that exist? And no, brahmacharya meant for controlling senses in the household, or if you're going to use the grihastha ashram as the example, which is what it's meant to be, the step. Yeah, it's meant for controlling the senses. One shouldn't enter into it with uncontrolled senses. You're just going to cheat yourself, cheat the person that you're taking under your wing as a male. And it's a gradual process, and there's some license there for sense gratification in the household ashram. But my goodness, I mean, I'll go ahead and steer it toward the brahmacharya paradigm, that the cost of tolerating lust in comparison to the responsibility taken upon oneself, if done properly, whereby you do advance and come to the point of controlling your senses and becoming peaceful and enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness. You know, it's much more simpler to do it in the brahmacharya ashram. You can achieve the same result in either one of the ashrams, but it really comes down to what do you want. And because of the modes, see, that's what's so important about full engagement and conscientiously really putting oneself into the full engagement of Krishna consciousness. If you don't stay steadily in the service, then the modes will have their effect upon you, and then your karma is going to come up. Most people have the karma of getting married, most people. But you can avoid it. You can avoid the bullet, as they say, dodge the bullet. If you stay absorbed in your service, the process of Krishna consciousness, and you really, it's like Madhavendra Puri Prabhu, he was using an example the other day, and I really don't think he's a very good example. You know, he should either not gotten married or he should have stayed married. That's me shooting a pea shooter at him, you know. What we don't know. I don't know what happened to the wife. Krishna would have taken care of her. But just because I'm not good at this, no, you chose that. Like, I don't know how many times some of the Prabhupada's householder devotees asked Prabhupada for sannyas. Thinking of my Prabhu, Jagadish Prabhu. I know he asked Srila Prabhupada at least 3 times. Prabhupada said, no. So many times he said, you're properly situated, you don't need to take sannyas, you'll get the same result. So it's like, ideally, you understand your psychophysical nature by the help of guru, siksha gurus, diksha guru, and you perform those duties. And if you do them, then you'll get the mercy. But if you try to perform someone else's duty, another ashram, when that's not really suited to you, whether it be the brahmachari, the householder, then even if you try your best at it, you're going to mess up, and you would have been better off sticking to what was, you know, the verse I'm referring to. 2 verses, and actually twice in the Gita. So that shed some discussion. I think they're really nice thoughts that you brought up. As Pankajangri Prabhu would say, good luck. My friends, if you want to discuss anything else, we can do so afterwards, breakfast or what have you. Thank you for your company, for your attention, for your patience. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.